Planet coming to you once again with another video. We're gonna let this video play. Stephen Wolver TV talk about God and Magog in the darkness. No rights to the video or music, strictly for educational purposes only. Let's get into it, Israel.
Gog and Magog are figures mentioned in several religious and mythological traditions, the Hebrew Bible, the Quran, and certain other ancient texts. The interpretations of Gog and Magog vary across different cultures and religious perspectives. In the Old Testament, Gog and Magog are mentioned in the book of Ezekiel. In that text, it describes Gog as a ruler and Magog as a land. They are portrayed as adversaries who will come against the people of Israel. But the exact identity of Gog and Magog is unclear. Some view them as symbolic representations of evil forces, while others have tried to associate them with historical or future nations. And in this context, it is a God-spoken prophecy for the latter days. In the Quran, Gog and Magog, Yajuj and Majuj in Arabic, are portrayed as powerful and corrupt nations that will be unleashed upon the world before the Day of Judgment. Allah grants the righteous ruler Dhul-Qarnayn the ability to build a barrier to contain Gog and Magog, preventing them from causing widespread corruption. They are prophesied to break free near the end of times. Apart from the Abrahamic religions, references to Gog and Magog can be found in other mythologies and traditions. The names are sometimes used more broadly to refer to chaotic and destructive forces. Now, some historical figures and nations have been suggested as possible candidates, but there is no consensus. Others view Gog and Magog as symbolic representations of cosmic or spiritual forces rather than specific nations. One thing is for certain, at some point it looks like we're going to be facing a force that wants to take over the world, whether that's an army of men or an army of monsters. So, Yajuj and Majuj are said to be unleashed from behind a barrier or wall that was built by the ancient ruler Dhul-Qarnayn. The story is found in the Quran. Dhul-Qarnayn is described as a righteous and powerful ruler who travels to the ends of the earth, where he finds a people beseeching him to protect them from Gog and Magog, who were causing mischief and corruption in the land. Now, Dhul-Qarnayn agrees to help and builds a barrier or wall using iron and copper. This barrier is intended to contain Gog and Magog until a future time when they will be released. According to Islamic eschatology, Gog and Magog are destined to break through this barrier near the end of times, signaling the approach of the Day of Judgment. Until when the dam of Gog and Magog has been opened, and they, from every elevation, descend. And the true promise of resurrection has approached. Then the eyes of those who disbelieved will be staring in horror. Oh, woe to us! We had been unmindful of this. Rather, we were wrongdoers. Now, a barrier made of iron and copper, you can put the two metals together, but you can't mix the two to get an alloy. You can make steel or bronze with iron and copper. Using these two metals, you'll have a structure that is strong and one that won't corrode over time. This here comes from stories of the Quran. I shall recite to you something of his story. Verily, we established him in the earth, and we gave him the means of everything. So he followed a way, until, when he reached the setting place of the sun, he found it setting in a spring of black muddy or hot water. And he found near it a people. We said, O Dhul Qarnayn, either you punish them or treat them with kindness. He said, as for him who does wrong, we shall punish him, and then he will be brought back unto his Lord, who will punish him with a terrible torment. But as for him who believes and works righteousness, he shall have the best reward. And we shall speak unto him mild words. Then he followed another way, until when he came to the rising place of the sun, he found it rising on a people for whom we had provided no shelter against the sun. So it was, and we knew all about him, Dhul Qarnayn. Then he followed another way, until when he reached between two mountains, he found before near them, those two mountains, a people who scarcely understood a word. They said, O Dhul Qarnayn, verily Ya'juj and Ma'juj are doing great mischief in the land. Shall we then pay you a tribute in order that you might erect a barrier between us and them? He said, that wealth, authority, and power in which my Lord had established me is better than your tribute. So help me with the strength of men. I will erect between you and them a barrier. Give me pieces, blocks of iron. Then when he had filled up the gap between the two mountain cliffs, he said, blow. Then when he had made them red as fire, he said, bring me molten copper to pour over them, so that Ya'juj and Ma'juj could not scale it or dig through it. Dhul Qarnayn said, this is a mercy from my Lord, but when the promise of my Lord comes, he shall level it down to the ground, and the promise of my Lord is ever true. So, there are some parallels that have been suggested by scholars and interpreters between Gog and Magog and the creatures that emerge from the abyss in the book of Revelation. Gog and Magog are seen as powerful, destructive forces that will be unleashed before the day of judgment, causing chaos and corruption. In the book of Revelation, creatures emerge from the abyss after the sounding of the fifth trumpet. These creatures, described as locusts, bring pain and torment to those who do not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Gog and Magog are often seen as symbolic representations of evil forces that will be unleashed upon the world in the end times, while the creatures from the abyss in Revelation are symbolic of divine judgment and the consequences of rejecting God. They are both part of the apocalyptic narrative leading to the ultimate judgment. Now here's something that I found interesting. In English folklore and medieval literature, Gog and Magog are often associated with giants who play a role in the legendary history of Britain, particularly in the founding myth of London. The story is rooted in mythology rather than religious scripture, and of course has evolved over time. According to the legend, during the reign of Brutus of Troy, a giant named Gog-Magog lived on the island of Albion, or Britain. Brutus and his followers, the Trojans, were on a quest to establish a new kingdom. Upon reaching Albion, they encountered Gog-Magog and other giants who inhabited the land. According to Geoffrey of Monmouth, Quirinius was a Trojan warrior who accompanied the legendary founder of Britain, Brutus, in the aftermath of the Trojan War. After the Trojans arrived in Britain, they encountered a race of giants inhabiting the land. A particularly fierce giant named Gog-Magog was causing trouble, and Quirinius challenged him to combat. Quirinius and Gog-Magog engaged in a battle, and in the struggle, Quirinius proved to be incredibly strong and skilled, ultimately throwing Gog-Magog from a cliff. The place where Gog-Magog fell was later known as Gog-Magog.
Here's one thing you need to do before buying anything online. Don't spend another dime on Amazon until you watch this first. Watch this.
Magog's leap. Now, in recognition of his bravery and strength, Quirinius was given a portion of the land to rule. He chose the southwest of Britain, which came to be known as Cornwall. After the victory, Brutus decided to establish a city, which he named Troia Nova, later known as Trinovantum. This city eventually became London, and Brutus chose two giants, Gog-Magog and Quirinius, to be the guardians of the city. Celebrated giants. Not surprising, is it? According to the tradition, statues or effigies of Gog and Magog were placed in the Guildhall of London, and they were paraded through the streets during various ceremonies. The giants came to be the symbolic protectors of the city. Over the centuries, the story of Gog and Magog became intertwined with various cultural and historical narratives. The effigies of Gog and Magog in the Guildhall became an important part of London's civic pageantry. The statues were replaced over time, and the figures continued to be associated with London's traditions. So now, because of what's going on in Israel today, and there are a few people who are bringing up the discussion of Gog and Magog, and quite often people are associating Gog and Magog with the armies of Russia or China. People want to know where this wall that was built is, and there is debate about where that could be. People want to know what these beings are that's supposed to emerge from behind that wall. By the way, we are talking about beings that can't die. But anyway, let me see if I can clear some of this up. So, in the book of Ezekiel, there is the discussion about Gog and Magog. But it is not the only mention. It is brought up again. Do you know where? Now, when I read this to you, think about everything you know so far about Gog and Magog. And this chapter is going to sound interesting because there are other things mentioned that are extremely important. This is Revelation chapter 20. Listen. And I saw an angel come down from heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years, and cast him into the bottomless pit, and shut him up, and set a seal upon him, that he should deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years should be fulfilled, and after that he must be loosed a little season. And I saw thrones, and they sat upon them, and judgment was given unto them. And I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the witness of Jesus, and for the word of God, and which had not worshipped the beast, neither his image, neither had received his mark upon their foreheads, or in their hands. And they lived and reigned with Christ 1,000 years. But the rest of the dead lived not again until the 1,000 years were finished. This is the first resurrection. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power. But they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. So one thing to keep in mind about this is that during this 1,000-year reign of Christ, while Satan is locked away, remember, not all human beings have died. And what we have here is a time period when fleshly human beings are going to be walking around among superhumans who can't die. For 1,000 years, we'll be coexisting with people who have died and came back in this superhuman form. Then it reads, "And when the 1,000 years are expired, Satan shall be loosed out of his prison, and shall go out to deceive the nations which are in the four quarters of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them together to battle, the number of whom is as the sand of the sea. And they went up to the breadth of the earth, and compassed the camp of the saints about, and the beloved city. And fire came down from God out of heaven, and devoured them. And the devil that deceived them was cast into the lake of fire and brimstone, where the beast and the false prophet are, and shall be tormented day and night forever and ever." Even to this day, people are still celebrating giants, fallen angels, and all types of demons. They serve them. The ancient kings throughout time have served them. It seems like they are going to get one chance to destroy us in the end. But just like their arrival is prophesied and expected to happen, in the end they will fail to destroy us, just as it was also spoken. Well, that's all for now, and there is much, much more to come, so please stay tuned. I have some updates coming for you guys as well. So be sure to check the community post here on YouTube and Instagram at JAE Woodward. Until next time, everyone have a great evening or day. And as always, stay awake, stay aware, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all soon.